Institute and a great friend of Grace of the School Church. Over to you, Fred. So excited to hear from you.
Well, hi, everybody. Sorry not to be there in person. It's a weird time to be joining like this. And I mean, everybody's aware of it, and you can feel the uncertainty and the loss and the apprehension, anywhere. And it's for most of us who, like you, who live, many of you in St. Helena or in the Valley, and me who lives or works at Stanford. This is an uncomfortable, like, joining of planet Earth. We're getting a taste of the uncertainty and lack of solidity that has been most people's experience on this planet. I remember reading once that somewhere in the 1850s, I think, that only about 15% of people on planet Earth had food certainty. That is, that they knew for sure where their next meal was coming from. And that's incomprehensible to the people in my world, that not only don't we know where our next meal is coming from, but we have Whole Foods and Safeway and restaurants and everything right at the tip of our fingers, and now we're being we're touching the apprehension of humanity with some of our restrictions and the fears of, will I have enough, and can I squirrel enough food away in my basement so that if hell freezes over, like, I can at least eat for a while. And we're all touching the more elemental dangers that almost everybody has experienced, except the wealthy and the privileged, throughout history. And it's hard to do. I mean, you just have to admit that this is hard, that we're not used to it. We probably all have resistance to being humbled and diminished. And it's scary. It's scary to not have the protections that we're used to having for everybody. The protections of wealth, the protections of certain governmental privileges, and it just makes everybody more apprehensive. And the hard part that I see for us all is, like, both individually and collectively, what do we do about it? What the challenge, I mean, and we all struggle with the same thing. So, I have a friend of mine yesterday who showed me a picture of one of his brother's homes where he is literally preparing for Armageddon. That he has this big extra refrigerator in his house filled with supplies, and an entire room filled with supplies, so that he'll be okay, give or take, at least food-wise, for a year. And both my friend and I knew that at the same time that made some degree of sense. There was something missing there, some concern for others. And it just seems as what one of the things that this experience will do, and none of us know how long or how difficult will be, is it will give us a gut check as to our, relative, I'm going to say, spiritual touch. Is it all about us? Is it all about protecting who we care for, or does it reveal to us that we have developed compassion and that we do have concern for others? I mean, that will be revealed. The question of how much fear do we let dominate us will be revealed to us. I mean, you have to have fear. I mean, if if you don't have fear, like you're basically, you're not paying attention, or you're 6 feet under already. Um, Fear is the innate human response to change and threat and danger. And it's not just humans, it's every species on the planet. Its basic wiring is fear. And so you can't escape that. But the question is, besides fear, like what else? And what else do we cultivate to exist alongside fear? And that's, to me, I'm going to say that's the question. That's one of the questions that Jesus is always asking of people. Like, besides your fear and besides your concern for yourself, what else do you offer? And what other qualities do you bring? And what other qualities do you cultivate? And those are very challenging questions. The world wouldn't be in the condition that it's in if fear wasn't so powerful, and if it wasn't so deeply wired into our nervous systems, and if we didn't have the capacity to engender and practice other qualities as well. Like you have a basic container of fear, and then you have the human aspect that can operate around it, that can not eliminate the fear, but can give fear a different kind of purpose besides just survival and protection. And it'll just be interesting for everybody to see how it is that we all move ahead in whatever way we're being asked to move ahead, which is what else will we cultivate in addition to fear and protection? There's that wonderful training in A Course in Miracles, and the Course in Miracles is based on the question of, like, do you want to see through the eyes of fear, or do you want to see through the eyes of love? And those are very, very difficult questions, because as human beings you have to see through the eyes of fear. It's just, what is it, what else? And how do we language it to ourselves? Like, how do we deal with our perceptions so that we mitigate the fear and we take care of the basic requirements that fear asks, and then at some level allow ourselves to a bit ascend, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the hierarchy of needs are, yeah, survival is first, safety is second, and then people, and then esteem, and then giving, and then meaning, and then transcendence. And those needs don't go away. They can just be buried sometimes by the survival and safety needs. They can be obscured. And I think one of the reasons that we all come together still in churches like this, and which are happening all over, is to remind ourselves that safety and survival are not the end, and that those are the most basic needs, but they're not the only needs, and that there are, again, you know, not just relationship needs. Right after safety is the need for community. But it's not just a need for community, it's a need to contribute to a community. It's the safety needs can have you take from a community, like can can have you make sure that you get yours and that you have what you need. Those are safety needs. But the relationship needs are what can you give? Like what can you offer? Like what kind of support or solace or generosity do you have? And then from those relationship needs come the esteem needs and the higher level of like here's my gift, or here's my giving, or here's my purpose. And those needs do not stop. I what one thing I was reminded of, and it was just inside of me, as I saw, like, I signed on like 45 minutes ago before, and I saw everybody like getting started for this, and we're practicing and making sure the web thing worked. And I was thinking, how fascinating that is that in 2020 we have these little machines in front of us that allow us somehow to communicate with each other in a pretty amazing way. And here we are getting together in a religious kind of way to to join, not just as people, but to allow, I'm going to say, the part of us that's a soul to also connect. But I was struck also by my knowledge of what some of the Jewish people did in the Holocaust, which is even people in the concentration camps would try to meet together to pray. And even people in the concentration camps would, if they could, share tiny, tiny little pieces of the Torah with each other. Like they might write something on a scrap of toilet paper and share it. My God is whatever. That no matter how awful an experience was, it didn't extinguish, it couldn't extinguish some tiny piece of the human experience, that even in the absolute worst that anybody could imagine, some people were connected and trying to connect each other in this way of, like, even though on the external it looks bad, there's a little piece of the internal that remains free. And that, like, that image to me has always been striking to me. And the last piece that I'll talk about, not to like take too much of your time. I've been doing a good number of talks in the last 2 weeks on both the distinction and the need for both physical safety and psychological safety. And most of the directions, certainly the ones that we get from the CDC or places like that, are about physical safety. make sure that you keep 6 feet between you and, don't cough on anybody and protect yourself and your family. Those are all physical safety measures. Like they're designed to, at best, spread virus, contradict the spread of virus. But those warnings decrease psychological safety. Like when you're always focused on physical threat, your psychological safety goes down and your inner safety decreases. So what's missing in those admonitions is, one, an understanding of how threat itself reduces immune function and makes us less resistant to disease. But two, it requires in us some balancing, some psychological safety that can exist alongside the physical safety. So the physical safety is, again, externally generated and required for the culture to flourish. But if there's too much fear, then even physical safety becomes compromised because people locked in fear, they don't see things clearly. Is all they see is threat. And so I've been giving a good number of talks, I mean, in places that I've talked to anyway, on the need to cultivate psychological safety as well. And there's a couple simple things about that. One of them is the difficult understanding that on planet Earth, you're never 100% physically safe. Like that is a difficult truth of being a human being, which is, if you're lucky at times, you get to 99% safe, but you never get to 100. So you have to have inner mechanisms to quiet down and to touch some place of equanimity that is independent from the physical safety. That's one. And two is, again, the very simple reminders of compassion and gratitude. That instead of just a fear response, you also want a compassion response. One, a compassion response for yourself and your family, which is, we're in a tough predicament, an honest, like gentle compassion, but not just fear-based. And two, everybody's in this same tough predicament, not just me. A compassion, a a little more kind-hearted lens to hold our experience. And the gratitude piece is very similar in the sense that within the fear of hoarding and excluding everybody else from like our circle of care, which is what fear does, like just to, for all of us, just to remind ourselves when we do go to Costco that there's still abundance. And when we still have a home to be like kind of isolated in, or whatever it is that compassion and gratitude do. From what I've seen, the inner like safety becomes almost as important as the outer safety. So let me just finish my minutes with a moment of meditation practice. Just a cultivating equanimity moment. And so all of you who are listening out there, if you'd please just take a minute and allow your eyes to close. And as you allow your eyes to close, get comfortable. Like it's really an important aspect is to be able to sit comfortably. And to do that, you will need to notice if parts of you are tense or tight, and do what you can to relax them. And also to, in particular, relax your abdomen so that you can breathe comfortably. And allow your belly particularly to relax. And when you inhale, allow your abdomen to expand, because that's the only way that your nervous system knows that you're relaxed, is when you're no longer holding your belly tight. That's when your brain and nervous system recognize that you're okay. And then we're going to do like a minute or so of one of Thich Nhat Hanh's meditations. And this can only be done with a relaxed abdomen, is when you inhale and your belly opens, just say to yourself, I am. And then when you exhale, say to yourself, at peace. So this is done with full breathing. You inhale, your abdomen's relaxed, it expands when you inhale, and you are saying to yourself, I am. And then you exhale, and you contract your belly, at peace. And then practice maybe 10 breaths worth of I am at peace. And then after those 10 breaths or so, just very gently allow your eyes to open. And for just a moment, see if you can sit without distraction, like just sit. And again, just the reminder that, like, for human beings, we need like a sense of inner safety as well as we need the outer protection. Anyway, thank you. It was Nice to virtually see you all again.
Thank you so much, Fred. It was just incredible to hear your words this morning. I'll probably listen to it again and try to share it far and wide, because your perspective is always so important. But this morning it just really hit home even more than ever.